Okay, we are live in the Guelph Dads Facebook group tonight. We have a special presentation with a special guest and a special Guelph dad. It's Douglas Pflug, who's going to talk about COVID stress management. So stick around. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments there, and we will get to them. Okay, now I guess I'll just pass the conch over to you, Douglas. Take it. The stage is yours.
Sounds good. I just want to thank everyone for allowing me to come into their bedrooms, into their homes tonight. I really appreciate the fact that we get to talk as dads. I'm a father of a 25-year-old girl, I consider my little girl, and a 16-year-old daughter. Much like a lot of the guys that I'm seeing on the post, I went through the family court system twice, trying to preserve my 50-50 rights for both my daughters. My daughters were born of different moms, and probably spent thousands and thousands of dollars, like a lot of people there, and went through some pretty adverse times just trying to maintain those rights that I really enjoy. I'm not a father, I'm a dad, and I think you all know what that means. But recently we're starting to see a lot of people going through a lot of stress from the COVID. It's been a year now. From the beginning, people were really scared. People didn't know what the future was going to bring about. They went into a hypersensitive mode. And over the past year, we've started to see some crazy behavior where neighbors are ratting out on other neighbors. The civility level when you walk down the street is absolutely ridiculous. Tonight, I was walking the dog, and like 5 or 6 people actually step off into snowbanks because they're so scared to walk beside us, even though I may have a mask or not. So my whole purpose tonight is just to kind of refocus us and ground us to what I call finding your granite. I've actually been given a book deal, and I'm in the process. I'm about 90% finished of a book called Finding Your Granite, The 4 Cornerstones of Personal Leadership. And I want to share a little bit of that with you tonight and some of the strategies that I've used to combat COVID. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Waterloo. I came to Guelph to play football and wrestle at the University of Guelph. I had some pretty bad experiences being bullied quite extensively as a young man. When I was 18 years of age, I lost my best friend. He was blown up in Air India. So just as I was becoming a man, it was a little bit difficult and just trying to find myself because, again, I protected this young man. He was bullied. I was bullied. I hadn't fully grown into this the size that I am now. And some of the adversities there. I went to work with, after university football, the Guelph Police Service. I hope I haven't met some of you in a bad way, but if I did, I hope that I treated you with my core values, which we're going to talk about shortly. Had some pretty crazy things happen internally there. This isn't a bitch fest, but met a lot of bad leaders and bad people, unfortunately, both in the job and outside the job. But in the end, the adversity that I was forced to experience, the resiliency tools that I built, the success that I've moved forward. I retired 3 years ago, and I'm teaching at the Ontario Police College right now, and I'm very honored to be part of the face of the new Society for Police Officers. I've had about 4,000 recruits. What I'm really seeing is that with society right now, people are lacking 4 basic cornerstones, and those are core values. Customer service has gone out the window. Our community service has really been hampered because we can't get out and help people. And actually, when you look at it too, the 4th section is complacency. We're starting to see a lot of people disengaging from life, and I really want to encourage people to not disengage, but to actually engage and get out there. I go back to my father when I was young. I grew up in Lakeshore Village in Waterloo, which is kind of like a 15 Willow Road area. And my teacher in grade 7 called me Fatty Pflug and said that I was a welfare piece of trash because of where I lived. I remember when I went for a walk with Dad, and he basically told me that the teacher was wrong, which was kind of foreign to me. Usually our parents back in the 70s and 80s supported the teachers unconditionally. But he said that I was a millionaire, and we're all millionaires right now, guys. And that's one thing we have to realize. And how Dad equated it is that our name and our word is our bond. And everything that we do in life, whether it's as dads, whether it's we're working, whether we're not working, or even the interaction with ourselves, the more that we're nice to people and the more we invest in ourselves, then our net worth basically will be a multimillionaire. And he basically said that as we go through life, make sure we continue to invest in ourselves and we invest in being a good person, because one day that's going to reap some incredible dividends. Recently, they did a study in Harvard University. Actually, it was 2010, and they talked about being the benefits of being a happy healer or a happy helper. And when you look at it, if you act kind towards people, and that's one of the big things that I think that a lot of people are forgetting now. Kindness is one of those old-fashioned words and something we take for granted, especially in COVID when we've been separated by our masks or our distance. But realize that when you are kind to people, it actually generates some incredible energy in our systems. It's good for our health. It makes us happy. It actually can increase our lifespan, and it can increase our quality of life, where we can live every second of every day. And it's also going to release a lot of serotonin in our brain, which will give us a natural high. So as we move forward today, I always want ourselves to challenge to be better people as we move forward. When we talk about our four cornerstones, I look at things in life where if you look at a conventional scoreboard and you see that you've lost a situation 4-3, let's not look at it as a loss, but let's look at it as an opportunity for growth. For those of you that were athletes, you remember when coach brought the film in and you watched the game film to see where you made mistakes, but you also look to see where you had some successes. And that's what I want us to do moving forward, is don't look at what made us lose the battle, but let's look at what made us compete all the way through. And that is based on my four core values of honor, integrity, passion, and accountability. And I really want you guys to walk away tonight with your piece of homework, is to figure out what 4 words best exemplify who you are, for what you stand. Or when you look at a tombstone test, you'll see my date of birth was 1996, and hopefully 95 years later, you'll see when I passed away. People will look at the day that I was born and the day that I died, but that's irrelevant for my life. It's that tiny little dash in the middle that exemplifies or represents my life. So what is your life going to be moving forward? And right now, when we're sitting at home with COVID, we got a lot of time to reflect. We have a lot of time to plan. So I want you to really formalize what 3 or 4 words best exemplify who you are and who you want to be moving forward. Because we look at COVID as almost a natural break. Look at who we were, who we are today, and who we want to be moving forward. We can't change who we were. We can only learn from who we were and what we went through, whether it was a positive or a negative. Who we are today, we've got a great opportunity through the isolation that we have, or just some of the stresses that we've had that are unlike anything we've ever had, to formalize who we want to be moving forward. With our core values, we can take that goal to move forward and basically write a script for a story that hasn't been written yet. For me, my 4 core values are honor. And honor basically means I like to follow the rules. Integrity, it's kind of what I do when it's what I do when no one's watching. It's always easy to be a good person when we've got an audience, but what do you truly do when no one's watching? That's what integrity means to me. Passion, I think you're going to get from it. I live every second of every day. And after my buddy Ram passed away through the Air India crash, I realized that, life is in, it could just disappear. So at 18 or 19 years of age, when he passed away, I realized that, and I challenged myself to try to live every second of every day, so that once I sit in the wheelchair when I'm 90 years of age, I can sit back and roll back and go, man, that was an awesome opportunity. I'm so glad I did A, B, C, D, E. Not a situation where I'm saying, I wish I was, or I wish I've done it. So with that, I like to say it's better to be a has-been than a never was. And the last thing that we talk about is accountability. As dads, we're all accountable to our kids. Unfortunately, we're going to be accountable to our spouses if we're with them or not. We're going to be accountable to the rules. We're going to be accountable to our budgets. So accountability is something, it's kind of the rules and the infrastructure that we need to follow to be the best that we can be moving forward. In life, and right now, COVID is saying no. If you look at Admiral McRaven's speech, he talks about making your bed every day. And when you get up in the morning, you start with a positive. And as you move through those days, you continue to increase positive steps. So it's almost like building a path in the garden where you're putting those big paver stones down. When you walk through your day, at one point, there's going to be a big, massive wall in front of you that says, no, you can't go by. If you take 2 or 3 steps back to those positions of positivity that you've created throughout the day, you're going to see that maybe that wall is only 3 feet wide. And instead of your face being stuck right at it where you can't see around it, maybe if you take those few steps of positivity, or take back to positivity, much as COVID is doing right now, we're too stuck up against the COVID wall to sometimes understand what we're doing. And people are basically being paralyzed by that fear or by that inactivity. Once you take those 2 or 3 steps back, you'll see the wall is only 3 feet wide. Then just set some of those paver stones of positivity laterally and then move forward and go around it. So please don't look at COVID as a no. Look at it as a next opportunity so that we can go out there and be the best that we can be moving forward. Just pulling up my screen here just to make sure that that I'm as current as possible. The way I live my life, and I want to challenge you, is if we're not making someone's life better, we're wasting our time. Now, we've all been brought together for that incredible, noble role as being a dad. So let's make sure that we try to improve the lives of our children. We try to be a model. For my personal mantra for leadership, it's lead with your best self. Dads, lead with your best self. Model the behavior you seek of others. And that's not only with our children, but it's also laterally to the other dads. So model the behavior we seek of others, and we've got to create environments where other people can succeed. And that would be our children, our families, or even as we've reached out to each other to help other fathers. But the big thing behind that mantra is you got to take care of you before you take care of other people. Let's make sure that we're taking care of ourselves right now. We're getting our proper sleep. We're getting proper health. We're getting mental health checks just to get baseline checks to see where we are. Because again, who we were, who we are, and who we're going to be are all interlinked. So let's try to take some control of that destiny on who we will be moving down the road. As we kind of get to a situation right now, I would like to open it up to some conversation. I would like to open up some questions if people have that. But I do have several other lessons that I wanted to move forward. But when you look at so we've talked about our core values. Now I want to talk a little bit about complacency. Life is meant to be out and lived. And when I do an open presentation, I actually bring up the video of Morgan Freeman when he's laying dead on the gurney and the bucket list, and the speech going around there. And I'll always ask people, did you like the movie The Bucket List? And generally most people say that they loved it. I love the movie, but in reflection, when I looked at it from a different perspective, I thought actually it was quite a sad tale. Why is it that two men have to be terminally ill at 80 before they start to live? Do not be complacent in life. Let's make sure that we live every second of every day so that when we move forward, we can leave no doubt, and at the end of the day, we can sit back and say, we had a great ride. When we look at our customer service, which is another one of our cornerstones, this is what we do right now. There's a lot of opportunities now that we can help. We can be nice to people. COVID is getting a situation where a lot of people, their faces are covered up. And actually, there's a new term under the Urban Dictionary called SMIES. It means a smile with your eyes. Try to maintain that good customer service or be nice to people. As I say, I'm walking around day in and day out, and I'm seeing so many people disengage, so many people acting precarious because they're scared. Well, let's not make that fear of COVID paralyze us. Let's get that fear to motivate us so we can continue to be nice to people. When you go out there and you're nice to people, you're going to decrease pain in your body. You're going to decrease your stress. You're going to decrease anxiety. It's going to help with your depression, and it might even medically help with your blood pressure. So let's continue to be the good dads that we are as we move forward. And then we also have our community service. Right now, I know with my mom, she's locked in the house. She's kind of scared to go out. Make sure we reach out to those of our friends and families or neighbors that might be locked in, and let's go out and start to do some community service for them. Obviously we can't shovel snow right now, hopefully for the rest of the year, but let's go and get some groceries for them, or let's help people and find more inventive and new ways through COVID to reach out and really improve our community service to folks. So we've talked about our core values, which mine are honor, integrity, passion, and accountability. We've talked about complacency, where we want to live every second of every day and challenge ourselves and challenge our children to live every second of every day so they're not getting scared. A lot of children don't understand what's going on. So let's be the voice of reason, and let's give them knowledge in a very safe and casual environment. So when an emergent situation comes through, you've helped them template to move forward. We've talked about customer service, and again, we've talked about community service. So as we move forward, I honestly believe that those are the four cornerstones that we all have in our systems and in our bodies that we need to develop so that we can be successful and moving forward. So again, let's look at our core values, our customer service, our community service, and our complacency. And if you focus on those four cornerstones, much like your table, I honestly think that you're going to get so much value out of that the stresses of COVID are going to start to disappear. So your homework for today is to figure out your 3 or 4 words for your core values, okay? I want you to find new ways to be nice to people, whether it's a Zoom meeting like we're doing tonight or what have you. Find new ways to help your neighbors and be more of community service, and help your children and your friends and family to find a way to combat complacency. Just think about it. If you can take this very simple task that I'm giving you, and you can share that with some folks, you're going to provide them a system and an infrastructure in place in a very loving and caring environment where hopefully when they start to get scared, they can fall back on that template and they can be successful. So as my hashtag says, they can rise up and excel. They can be stronger, faster, fitter in their heart, their body, and their mind. But you can be the instrument of that and realize who you were. It's gone. But let's learn from that. Let's learn from the biggest failures. And I've had lots of failures in my life where that's where I found the greatest opportunities for personal growth. But we can't change who we were. We can only learn from that. We can take that knowledge, we can move forward, and we can template it into who we are today. Who you are today are the folks listening to me right now. And I'm giving you a very simple plan by your core values and the examination of your life for who you were, who you are, but who we're going to be. That's the exciting piece. Eventually, the fog of COVID is going to lift. Eventually, our masks are going to come down. Eventually, people are going to get out there and get their COVID vaccinations. What's next? That's the exciting part. Why not plan for that now? Plan now for what's going to happen in the future so that you're ready. Don't get caught where you're like, well, what do I do now? We can sit down and we can go through those steps, and always reach out to me and I'll always answer your messages or what have you to help you formalize that plan. Because realizing that we've had a very dark year, it is. But in that darkness, there is amazing light. And the one thing I instruct a lot of the people that I mentor is there's a light in darkness. You just need to know where to find it. And ironically, where you're going to find it is inside yourself. And that light is fueled by your core values, your community service, the customer service and how you treat others, and complacency. Make sure that you focus on those 4 C's. And I guarantee when the fog of COVID lifts, you're going to be able to live a much better life. But you got to take those steps now. We still have time. Now let's open up the floor to some questions.
Hey, Douglas, that was awesome. Thanks for that. There was a lot of comments happening in the chat there. I popped up a few there. You can see there's a few great comments. With 700 plus members, we really have some power to make a change. And I think you hit kind of the nail on the head there when you were talking about, finding new ways to be nice to people. It's really triggering in a few channels in people's brains to, how can we give back? What are some ways that maybe, just putting you on the spot here, but what are some ways that people can be nice to people during times of stress like this?
When I grew up, we used to send these things called cards. And it's kind of funny because I've got my agenda here. People used to send you these little pieces of paper that had a cool little saying on it. And inside, they'd write some nice stuff. Emails now and text messages, they seem to be so impersonal. If we've got time at home, go to the damn dollar store. You can get 10 thank you cards. Write out a personal note to someone so that when it goes to their mailbox, every day they go to and from their mailbox, there's nothing there. But just think about it now. Getting a letter is almost a special event, where when I grew up, I'm 54, it was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. That small little thing that you can do, man, that can unleash some incredible human potential. And that's the one thing that I always say. Let's make sure that we do nice things for people, because we have no idea how those small little acts of kindness can unleash some incredible human potential. Why? Because you cared.
100%. I'm a marketing guy, and it's crazy the power of sending a card to somebody. So much so, one of our clients is Bison Dentistry here in Guelph, and for them, last year we sent out Christmas cards, and one of my colleagues actually went there and saw our Christmas cards sitting there on display with our entire team. It was just one of those things that you don't even understand how far it could actually go, but having a tangible piece of cardboard has a lot of meaning to it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
And this right here, I think it's a great segue to just something else, because we do have a lot of business owners that are in the group, and I can't think of too many people hit harder than business owners in 2020, right? So, and you did make a great quote, which was, COVID is not a no, it's an opportunity.
You're right.
Right. So maybe you can talk and give a little bit of inspiration to business owners, and specifically in areas like restaurants and travel that have been hit really hard during the pandemic.
One of the best examples of a young man that I mentored know as a next opportunity was Andrew York. He was training for the Olympics, and I don't know if a lot of people, but I would encourage you. You can go to my the Rise Up and Excel. You can see a video account, but basically he trained for his entire life to go to Rio in a triathlete category. He goes there, he's training like a freak. I mentored him before that because we knew when he came back from the Olympics, he wanted to be a police officer, and I told him that I would help him out. And then he goes there, he comes out of the water in the world like 19th. He's like way ahead of where he thought he would be. He jumps on the bike, he's whipping through the bike, and I can't remember how long the race was, but 2 kilometers from the end of the race, someone comes down, wipes him out, and breaks his bike. So he could have sat there and went, oh, it's over. But there's a photo, if you query him on the National Post, that shows him running beside his bike, because you can't finish the race unless the bike and the rider go. So he's running with those hard clipless pedals beside his bike, obviously very upset, finishes it, flips it, then he goes and runs the marathon. He finished absolutely last in the triathlon at the Olympics, but he finished. And when he came back, it was so amazing because we were talking, and he was understandably lost. But I said, Andrew, look at what we learned from that. You learned that, in a world stage, you will never give up. You want to be a police officer, sometimes you might have to use those same skills you used to never give up on yourself or give up on people, so that one day when they call you up and say, Andrew, we want to give an interview to you, and they ask you the question that they always do, tell us a time when you faced an adverse situation. What was it? What did you do? And what was the outcome? You can say, well, I was at the Olympics. And he did give that speech. And then when the recruiters called me up, they had said to me, is this really real? So I sent them the link. And 2 years ago, he graduated from the police college in Aylmer, and he fulfilled his second lifelong dream. His grandfather had been an OPP officer, and he was as well. So, when you look at business owners, again, what is the next opportunity that you have? Last year, before the city council allowed for the street patios, people were scared. Those street patios were the next opportunity. Well, how are they going to make it better this year? When you look at the cards, the director of the police college is a pretty busy guy. But every year, and we've got about 200 staff there, every year he gives you a personalized birthday card. And again, it's something so simple, but it's a nice little gift, probably costs him $1 or $2, but he writes a few nice sentences, so it's personalized, so he's generating conversation back and forth. So when we look at it with COVID, and we look at budgets, and we look at profit margins, we can only cut the profits so down or go too low, because you got to make some money. Where you can truly make a difference is your customer service. And if you go in there, and again, when you look at Google, people do Google reviews. And how often do you see nice reviews, but you see bad reviews? That's where I would suggest business owners really focus, because again, they got to make money. People know that, but really focus on that customer service and make it more value added for the people's buck, and they're going to get more repeat customers.
You'll be surprised during the pandemic, when the pandemic first hit, actually Google was shutting off negative reviews for businesses, because there was obviously a massive influx of negative reviews, but it wasn't to the fault of the business. They were doing all they could, short staff, this and that. But Google was actually on the side of the business owner in that regard, right? So, but there are a few questions here, Doug. I want to get through these.
Sure.
One says, Doug, you said you had a lot of failures. How did you overcome them? Maybe a couple of tips on overcoming failure.
I was very fortunate. I've got very loving parents and a very loving family. As I said, I had 2 divorces. I'm on my 3rd marriage. I finally met my soulmate, but I stayed true to my core values that I try. And when I walk away from a situation, say after tonight, someone hates my guts, I can't change that. But when I walk back in reflection, and the conventional scoreboard would say I lost 4-3, but I walk back, even Jay, with you, and I say, did I treat you with honor? Yes. Did I treat you with integrity? Yes. Passion? Well, yeah. And accountability? Then I cut myself some slack. I'm not going to win every battle. And that's the one thing that I focused. When I went through some of those big failures, is I thought, okay, what am I going to learn out of this? Not poor me. This sucks. I'm in a bad situation. This is going to be a period where I promise myself I'm going to grow. And then I apply my 4 core values.
Do you find the applying the 4 core values for somebody that's not familiar with applying the 4 core values could feel much like a golf swing? You have to you have to have all hitting off on all cylinders for it to be effective.
And I honestly do. And that's why I want to give them some homework now in a very casual situation. So if they do experience failure, it's baby steps, 1 at a time. Go for the first, the second, the third. But the biggest thing, even to step beyond that, is to start to do some positive mindset training. In the morning when you wake up, most of us look in the mirror. Do you say, ugh? Or do you say, and honestly, people ask me, what is the first thing I do in the morning? Well, I would say, get out of bed. I go into the mirror, I look at myself, and I say, I'm going to change someone's life today. Sounds pretty grand, but as we end today, I'm going to tell you how you can change people's lives very simply.
I love it. That's awesome. A couple other questions here. Doug, we got, how does a group, how collectively, how can a group of 700 plus people help other dads in the community? I mean, it's such an opportunity with such a good audience here. And to be honest, and I've heard this many times, and I'm not just being biased because I'm an admin in the group, this is really one of the better groups out there. There's no drama. It's just fully full on support for one another. Are there things that we can do as a group to help out the greater community? I mean, there are great examples we've seen already in the Guelph Dads where people have been asking for handouts, asking for help, and a handful of people stepped up. I think for one gentleman, we generated over $1,000 just by a simple ask. It's crazy. Yeah.
And because my wife, Michelle, she teaches with me, and I always joke that she's the brain and I just lift stuff. But I show her this website, and she's very impressed that we've actually got over 700 people. So that's incredible. But I don't say, don't even change. Just take it, tweak it, make it better. I love seeing the feedback. No one is rude to each other. No question is too stupid. There's questions gone from home repairs to this. Keep up the communication. And that's the neat thing here. And I like seeing when someone posts something and then people communicate back. We all know that people, like this way, I'm talking to you. And when we type something, we talk to someone. But when someone responds back, that's when we speak with people. And I was one of the original officers back around G20 that we created the social media platforms for all the police services pretty well in Canada that's now being used. And the big thing at the beginning, and similar with this, this site doesn't do, is they didn't want to allow people to give feedback. And I said, well, then no one's going to use it because if we don't have that two-way communication, social media is a substitute for that. But if we shut people down, we're not going to get them. So if we want to, as a group, continue is keep those good questions coming through, keep supporting each other, let people know that if shit hits the fan or they're in an emergent situation, they can have the confidence to come on here. No one's going to make fun of them. And you're going to have 10 or 15 people trying to help you out. This is very rare. So let's preserve it. Let's take it, tweak it, make it better so that who knows down the road who we can help, and know that we are helping people on a daily basis.
100%. And just to add to that, like I kind of geek out on the Facebook algorithm a bit because it's my job, but that's one thing that why this group is so good. And when you do put a post out there, you'll see the reach. It reaches almost the whole group a lot of times. And awesome. And the algorithm does catch those kind of groups that have a lot of spammy content, which is why we say don't spam the group with stuff, keep it clean, because the spam only hurts the group. Because if we're putting promo posts out all the time and nobody's actually stopping or engaging on that content, it tells Facebook this is not a very engaging group, and they show your content to less people. So that's why we want to always keep it clean and keep it helpful and keep those comments going. And like Douglas said, right, that constant communication and the back and forth only is going to help out the group and that actual piece of content that's posted on the group.
And the neat thing that we've got here is it's so against the way we were raised. Toxic masculinity. Real men don't cry. Real men don't ask for help. Real men, blah, 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 all that other bullshit. But you've actually got real men that are in tune with who they are so that they're actually asking for help. Is that not amazing or what? This is actually going against a lot of society, because the way I'm 54, I was raised. Real men don't cry. Suck it up, princess. You never ask for help and you never ask for directions, even though you get lost for a long period of time. Here, we're getting so many people engaging right now. So that's why it's so encouraging for me being 50 plus to see a lot of the younger users out there actually realizing that asking for help is not a bad thing. And I did a podcast. I did a podcast under Thrively, and it's on my website, but it was called Vulnerability is Your Superpower. And I love that.
100%. I love it. That's awesome. Such a fantastic example of grit, referring to the example you spoke about a second ago there, Douglas. He knew that the glory of medal and the PB was out of reach and still didn't give up. Impressive. So also, here's a question. A lot of people have let themselves go a bit during COVID. I forget what it's called, the COVID-20 or something like that. Do you have any suggestions about how to balance physical and mental health during a pandemic?
I myself have gained 10 pounds. So the big thing right now is the weather's getting better. Let's get out there. We've got so much screen time right now. Let's make sure we disengage from the screen. We saw that with the US election, where you've had one side with one agenda, the other with another. And we're starting to see that in Canadian media as well. get rid of some screen time, try to limit that, but get out there, start walking around, get out, smell the air. I know we can't do a lot of things out there, but we can still go for walks with our kids, walk the dog or whatever, listen to some classical music, but we got to limit the screen time for the mental health, because unfortunately, the thing I learned when I was at G20, it was an interesting time. I was personally seconded to be a mobile media officer there. And when the cruisers were burning, what people didn't see, before the cruisers were burning, there was a photo on the Toronto Star that showed a big line of riot officers, and this young girl came up and she was blowing bubbles in the officer's face. And the officer grabbed her wrist and they said he was being oppressive. What the media did not tell people is that they were liquefied with urine. So these guys are in 85-degree weather, full riot gear, getting basically someone blowing bubbles made with urine on them. So I'm talking to this little reporter from CNN in New York City, a very nice girl, big Farrah Fawcett hair. All of a sudden, we're behind the lines. Out of the corner of my eye, I see something and I duck. So she gets hit in the side of the head with a water balloon. And she's like, oh my God, this is terrible. And instantly I knew what was in the water balloon. It was liquefied with urine and feces. So that's all on the side of her head. And I talked to her, I said, why don't you tell people what you were hit with? So she went over to the van. She talked to her editor in New York. I could hear her yelling and screaming. She came back and said, I'm not allowed to talk about this. The only two questions I'm going to ask you are, why did your prime minister waste $1 billion to host this? And also, why are you oppressing people? I said, well, first of all, the question about the prime minister, that's way off my grid and off my pay scale. Secondly, I'm not here to oppress anyone. I'm here by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that we all have the freedom of speech and we all have the freedom to move wherever we want. Our role here is to make sure that everyone's rights are guaranteed. She goes, well, I'm not going to answer your questions. And I said, well, honestly, our interview is done. So people have to realize that media is profit driven. Media wants to have an agenda. So right now you're starting to see a lot of conflicting stories with COVID and stuff like that. We need to disengage from the constant barrage of profit-driven media and agendas and stories and narratives so that we can actually think for ourselves and find another source of news or just tone it down. That's where I think right now the mental health. I coach Special Olympics. I've been a Special Olympics coach for about 30 years. And a few of my guys are really stressed right now because they're locked into screen time. They're hearing all of this stuff and it's making them more anxious. It's making them more in a mental health crisis. So even with them, I said, guys, you got to disengage from the screen and get out and walk.
Yeah, and disengaging from the screen is so important. I'm reading a book right now called Superhuman by Dave Asprey, where it talks about the trick to anti-aging and how to become superhuman. And one of the key points in there is that blue light that screen or TV emits is called, he calls it junk light. And you want to reduce the amount of junk light that you take in a given day. He says as difficult as it might be, but you should not have any blue light hitting your brain in 2 hours prior to going to sleep every night.
Yeah.
But it's really, and on top of that, you mentioned going out for a walk. Well, I mean, that is something that gives that vitamin D that you need to get on a daily basis. Go out for at least 15, 20 minutes and soak up some sun. You got to do it. Right. It's funny how I think it's just a matter of turning some of these negatives and making it positive, finding new hobbies that are good for you, that are healthy. For myself, I've never thought I'd ever do this, but I'm on this 16-hour fasting twice a week now. I would have never done that before, but I'm doing it now because just being in COVID and being stuck in a rut. And like you said, waking up every morning and looking in the mirror and not saying, I'm going to help somebody today, but looking at yourself and being like, yo, I got to do something. I got to change something up here. I don't feel good. You know what I mean? And it's taking that action.
Great. And the other thing I started to do about 3 weeks ago, I woke up, my back is wrecked. I'm like, what the hell happened? So, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I've been with the Guelph Storm for almost 30 years. So I did a biomechanical assessment and I realized because I was working from home, I was sitting in my chair in a seated position for like 5 or 6 days locked up. So my hip flexors tightened up and it put my lower back out. So, I literally sat down and started to do some overbody stretching. And if people are worried about that, there's some great YouTube. Here we're talking about screen time, but there's some great yoga things on YouTube or stretching routines. Stretch, get the body back out to that form. So we stretch out from that hunched over Mr. Burns sitting at the keyboard position. And, we got to take care of our bodies so that they can take care of us.
Awesome. Love it. That's amazing. This is great. This is great, Douglas. I mean, like for everybody out there, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining. We have a handful of people watching, and thank you if you're watching the playback. This is going to live in the channel forever. So just, you can always come back and listen to this conversation. I'm going to give it another listen back. But is there any, did you want to close up here, Douglas? Did you have a few things you want to touch on?
The neat thing, again, I can't impart enough the core values piece. Again, it's been my foundation. A lot of the young athletes that I mentor, and this isn't a situation where I'm bragging, but I've had the privilege of coaching down at West Virginia University. I was with the Guelph Storm since 1996. I was a national coach for Wrestle Canada, coached OHL, NHL, all of that type of stuff. And when you look back on things, our core values is where people believe in us. You know, when you look at our honor, our integrity, our passion, accountability, please do the work. Dwayne Hay, one of the ex-Guelph Storm guys, he's started his own on-ice and off-ice hockey training school, and his hashtag is do the work. You got to do the work, guys. This is not going to just happen. You know, we don't operate in isolation. So make sure we talk about our core values. Make sure we're out there for our customer service, our community service, and our complacency. Live every second of every day and realize that we're dads. We have an amazing opportunity and responsibility here. Society in general, we've all seen through the family court system, is biased against the role that we have. So that means we need to fight like hell and really increase who we are as people, who we were, the adversities that we've all gone through. You're not alone, and that's a big thing. You're not alone. And when you're in darkness and alone at the same time, being alone is worse than the situation that got you into the darkness. So realize you're not alone. You can reach out through any way to get a hold of us, but we've got to realize who we were. We've got to learn from that. We have to analyze who we are right now and set that plan on who you're going to be. Don't wait for life to happen. Embrace it now. One of the biggest things where I get criticized is I'm not aggressive, but I want things too soon. But no one is ever going to take away. I was never a gifted athlete, but where I was gifted was my tenacious attitude that I'm going to go out there and take life and make sure that I don't allow things to bypass. As we conclude today, I've done a little bit of math. So I've given you homework for the 4 core values. Okay, we've talked about I want you to do your customer service, your community service, and complacency. But if you look at, and you've said this several times, we have 716 members that will have access to this. How you're going to, and remember how I said every day I wake up in the morning and I say I'm going to change someone's life? You can do that by a simple smile. I want everyone to, and I'm challenging everyone that watches this, make one stranger smile per day. Because if we all do that for the next year, that's going to represent 261,000 smiles that this Facebook group is going to create. Okay? Then if we do that for the next 20 years of our lives, these 716 people, we will be responsible for 5.2 million smiles because of what we've talked about here. And then if we've got 2 children, or we double that, that's 10 million, 10.5 million. So what happens here can truly change the world and can truly make people's lives better. And just think about it. COVID has put a lot of people, whether physically or mentally or spiritually, on the ledge of a high building. That small act of kindness can pull them off that ledge. You turn them around, you show them that this is not a no, there's a next opportunity, and you walk around. And then with blue screens and how do we fall asleep at night? I'm a Christian, and I won't deny that. At the end of every night, I say my prayers. In my prayers, I reflect on my day, and I go through my mind every single smile that I created. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And I know that I've saved people's lives every single day, and that's how I fall asleep, because I know I've earned that day.
Love it. That's amazing. I've got a 5-hour journal, or 5-minute journal, not hour journal, but I find that's great as well. Just having that gratitude at the end of day and doing a reflection. I don't think we take enough time in a day or remember to do it, to be consistent with it every single day and have that reflection. But I love it. I think you're dropping straight fire there, Doug. Make everybody challenge, make one stranger smile per day. Let's go.
I hope so.
Yeah. Doug, so if anybody out there has any questions for you or best ways to get in touch with you, follow you, what's the best way for them to do that?
On Instagram, it's just Ironwill 360. Through Twitter, it's at Ironwill 360. and my website is riseupandexcel.ca.
Awesome. Love it. Okay. And do we have anything else there? Someone bought my coffee at Tim's drive-thru last week. Made my day. There you go. They're already making moves out there.
But did that person pay it forward then?
That's the thing, right? You got to pay it forward. That's it. That's right.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Doug. Thanks for your time. This has been awesome. And we'll see everybody soon.
Take care, guys. Thank you.